Hello guys and welcome, it is ThatSrb2DUDE here today, bringing you yet another Splatoon 2 video. Now today I'd like to go over the patch comparison with you guys with version 1.4.2 to version 2.0. There aren't a lot of changes this time around, but I do have a few thoughts on some of the changes that are present. But with that being said, let's get started. The first buff is the Jet Squelcher. It now has a 40% faster shot speed when firing now. Also note that the range has not been changed. The second would be the Lunar Blaster. It now has an increased radius of ink coverage when it shoots a wall. This also applies to blasters as well. And the blaster in general also has better ink coverage behind it when it shoots forward. This buff includes all charges in the game, including the Bamboozler, Squiffer, Gootuber, Splat Charger, and Eliter. Basically, what the charges are now able to do are able to paint better when they shoot directly at the floor. The Triceratops has also received a buff. It now has an increased damage from 52 damage to 62 damage, and its movement speed while attacking has been increased by 10%. The Tent Umbrella has received a few changes. It now has a reduced time between readying and launching the umbrella from 1.5 seconds to 0.5 seconds. It has a reduced amount of ink necessary to launch the umbrella by roughly 25%, reduced the time it takes to regain the umbrella after it's destroyed or lost from 9 seconds to 6 seconds, and reduced the time a launched umbrella remains on the stage from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. Toxic Mist has reduced ink consumption from 70% to 60%. It has reduced the delay of ink recovery after throwing Toxic Mist by 25 frames. The effects have been reduced from 7 seconds to 5 seconds. And when using Ink Saver Sub for Toxic Mist, the efficiency has been reduced by 14%. When using Ink Saver Sub for Burst Bombs, there has been a reduced efficiency by 33%. Tentamissiles have received a buff where if you lock onto multiple targets, you can shoot your Tentamissiles out much faster than ever before. As you see in the 2.0 example, I've locked onto more targets but finished first compared to version 1.4.2. Inkjets are slightly harder to hit in the air, and its bullet velocity speed has been increased by 19%. As you see in version 2.0, the dummy is killed first. There has been a reduced duration of the beam effect for Stingray by 15 frames. There is also a really hidden nerf with this Stingray, which I'll talk about in my overview. And the last patch is Inkstorm, where there has been a reduced frequency of inking by roughly 20%. As you can see in version 2.0, there is much less ink compared to version 1.4.2. Now, there are a lot of very interesting nerfs and buffs that the weapons have received. The first one I would like to go over is the Jet Squelcher. I think having a 40% much faster velocity speed will allow it to be a much more consistent long-range weapon, and I can definitely see that being used a lot more on maps like Port Mackerel, Snapper Canal, and generally a lot of other maps in the game as well. The Lunar Blaster and Blaster buff, they didn't really get anything, so I'm going to just skip over that. All charges as well, they didn't really get anything either, other than just being able to paint the floor just a little bit better if they shoot directly at it. Not really something that's game-changing. The Triceratops is really interesting. Once it was already at 62 damage, and now it's at 52, and then they changed it from 52 to back to 62 again. Basically, it's the old Triceratops, but without the range. So it can do the pretty crazy fall-off damage, but I'm thinking that they probably tested that. And considering it didn't have the crazy range before, it should be just a little bit more bearable when it comes to fall-off damage with this weapon. Tent Umbrella received a few interesting changes. It's not more of a, I guess, Reinhardt shield, as some might say. It's kind of a thing where you kind of just get the tent out and it just fires straight away. That's kind of how it feels to me at this point in time. This is something I really wanted Toxic Mist to actually have as well. Just more efficiency, because every single time I felt like I throwed one, I'll just run out of ink straight away. So having the 60% depletion when throwing it is very, very helpful. I can definitely see a lot of weapons come to light from that, maybe even the Splashomatic, considering it has Toxic Mist and Inkjet, which also have received an interesting buff, which I will just go ahead and talk about now. Inkjet being slightly more harder to hit in the air makes it more defiant when it goes into the air, and it makes it feel more like a special weapon and doesn't get like shot down straight away. And the increased bullet velocity is very helpful too. You don't feel like you have to lead your shots as much as you did before, because the bullets are now traveling faster towards your targets. The Burst Bomb nerf is really insane. It's gonna kind of take down a lot of people who have been using Splattershot Just a regular splatter shot, not even the 10 attack, just a regular splatter shot. Considering that you could kind of just put a few subs and mains of Inksaver sub, and you'll be able to throw 3 burst bombs as well. By doing this, it's gonna kind of reduce the burst bomb spam that a lot of people kind of been doing with this weapon. If they want to do it, then they're just gonna have to stack even more Inksaver sub to be able to throw that many burst bombs again. Tensor missiles are really interesting. I'm not gonna say it's like super strong, but all it really does is just makes it a little bit less vulnerable when you are using tensor missiles, because I know for a lot of times, like whenever I would like mark 6 people and I'll just be standing in one spot for 3 seconds, I will just go mad because I just really want to move out of my position. But now that they've buffed it, so like if you target 4 people, you can move straight away right after. I think that's really helpful for this type of special. The Ink Storm's gonna hurt a few weapons that's used in today's meta. I would say the Splattershot Pro for sure, Splatbrella as well. These 2 weapons are really dominant when it comes to using Ink Storm. Also the Range Blaster, how can I forget that? These 3 weapons are gonna be hurt, especially for the Ink Storm, because 20% less ink coverage, you know, it hurts it quite a bit, especially for the Range Blaster, considering it isn't really the biggest painting weapon. This special kind of gave it the leeway to actually be able to paint much better, so with this nerf, it definitely is going to hurt it. And the last one I want to talk about is the Stingray. All it technically received was reduced duration time by 15 frames. That's pretty much all it received. However, we gotta look at some of the other patch notes in version 2.0. Now, there are a lot of bug fixes and a lot of menu changes and lobby changes and stuff like that. Just a bunch of, you know, fixes for Splatoon just to make it just a better game, of course. But there is one in particular that is basically a hidden nerf to the Stingray, and it applies with this. There has been a reduced amount of time between a player taking damage and beginning to recover from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. Now, why this is a hidden nerf to the Stingray is because the Stingray is so heavily reliant on chip damage. And this particular change for Splatoon 2 kind of goes for all weapons as well, but more so for the Stingray because it's so heavily reliant on chip damage. So basically, if you get hurt by any sort of damage, it takes you 1 second to start recovering health. So when it becomes a thing, when you come across a Stingray and they're just kind of waving around your ink, you're just going to make sure that you stay away from it for 1 second so you can start recovering again, and you should be able to, I guess, be more sturdy against them this time around in this patch. Also, I would like to mention something regarding motion controls in the transition of this patch. Personally, I feel a difference. I personally feel like the motion controls are slightly more responsive than they were in the last patch. This is just for me saying I've never been able to snap my aim fluidly in this game in particular, Splatoon 2. I've never been able to do it due to the latent motion controls. But I personally have felt a difference. I just wanted to know if you guys in the comment section below have felt some sort of difference. Please let me know, because personally, I think they've made it more responsive, which is great. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the patch notes so far. I think the developers have done a really good job with balancing the game. I'm interested to see how the Stingray is going to fare with all this, well, for that particular patch in the game as well. But anyways, that's all I've got to say for this video. You know, if anything pops up, I'll let you guys know. If you guys have not already, please subscribe to the channel, of course. Follow me on Twitter and Twitch, both in the description below. Do it for both if you're feeling generous. And as always, guys, this has been ThatSrb2DUDE, and I shall see you guys in a future video.